Sorry to go all Street Speed 717 on you guys, not with buying Corvettes and clickbait, but by wearing sunglasses inside for seemingly no reason. Just kidding, I actually really like Mike's channel, but, you know, regardless, you gotta poke some fun sometimes, come on. No, but my reason for wearing sunglasses is actually because I was weed whacking around my house and was not wearing what you should wear, which is these. Can you even see those in the camera? There we go. Safety glasses, like an idiot, and I launched a bunch of weeds into my eyes, which as it turns out I'm allergic to, so my eyes are super puffy and wrinkly right now. It's actually not that bad, but you can just sort of tell that my eyes don't quite look normal. You might not be able to tell as much on the video, but I can certainly notice the difference because I know what I look like. So sunglasses it is for today. But yes, I think I have figured out the Mustang's idling issues. And by I figured them out, I mean I kind of did something on a whim, and it seems that the problem has been fixed. So, let's go ahead and talk about that, but first and foremost, I am so exhausted today for some reason, so let's go grab a coffee so I can at least pretend that that's going to help with that. And speaking of pretending, I'm gonna pretend like I don't do a cold start in like every video ever that involves driving the Mustang, but come on. Look, I'm sorry, it's become tradition, okay? It's okay, this time we threw in the baby revs to pretend like it was different. Now let's go get some coffee. Coffee has been required. It's from McDonald's because affordable, and it has caffeine. So, here we are. Although I say that, but there have been studies that apparently have discovered that for a lot of people with ADHD, caffeine actually doesn't necessarily affect them, where it takes away the effects of their tiredness temporarily as much as other people. And that does kind of seem to be the case for me too, because I have to consume like a lot of caffeine before it feels like it does anything, and it still is like barely noticeable, so this is probably not actually gonna help. But on the bright side, it's coffee, and if you like how coffee tastes, then it's coffee. All right, so the Mustang. Hood needs to be open. It actually really doesn't, but we're talking about under the hood, so it makes things easier, I guess. And I don't know. We're gonna open the hood, that's the point. This is an engine, and you probably can barely see it because I pulled the car too close to the camera. Ghetto, 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 ghetto. There, now you can see 22% more of it. But honestly, seeing in the engine bay is not actually that important, but we're gonna go ahead and talk about what happened with the Mustang and why I think that the problem with the idle is basically fixed for the most part. I talked about all the things that could be causing the rough idle on the Mustang in a previous video, and it basically boiled down to the main things that I figured it might be was either a vacuum leak, a mass airflow sensor, or something to do with the upstream O2 sensors, or there's about a million other things that could cause it. Issues with the PCV system, some examples, the timing chain tensioner can cause lots of different issues with how the vehicle runs, and the idle in particular, VCT solenoids. There's so many different things that it could potentially be, but originally, I didn't think that it was a fuel delivery issue because I had run fuel system cleaner through it, and that didn't seem to help. And also, when I was monitoring the gauges on the data log file, everything seemed to be fine. It wasn't trimming an excess amount of fuel or anything like that. So I didn't think that that was what it was, or at least that was until just kind of on a whim, I decided to take a look at the data log file again and see if anything looked weird as the car was running, and I saw this.
Well, an update. I was sitting here basically doing an idle relearn after trying something different to see if anything had changed, and decided to check the data log, and it looks like the long-term fuel trims are actually up quite a bit at this point. And it might actually be a fuel delivery thing after all. Interesting.
And that's weird because it had not seemed like it was trimming an excess amount of fuel before, and what the Lambda readings were seemed like the air-fuel ratio was fine, so I didn't really think much of it until I saw that, and seeing that the fuel trim was trimming like an extra 27% at idle, like right after startup. That is a lot of additional fuel, and that is probably about the peak of what the stock injectors are even capable of sending into the engine before there starts to be a lean running condition. And this is all interesting to me because of one particular thing. You may remember that I ran Marvel Mystery Oil through a few tanks of the Mustang's fuel, and the reason why is because it has a kind of a random little issue where it'll sort of like cough or stutter when I'm blipping to do like a rev match downshift or something like that, and it'll just sort of stumble instead of spiking the RPMs up like you would expect. It doesn't always do it, but it does do it fairly often, especially when it's warmed up and it's been running at like a consistent RPM for a while. And more than likely, this is just an issue with the tune that's on the car. I'm still running the first revision of the Bama 93 race tune because I started having these issues, so I didn't want to send in for a revision if I was having issues with fuel delivery or spark or something like that, and basically have that adjustment just make up for an issue that's actually there. So I decided to run the Marvel Mystery Oil through the tank like it says on the bottle, and under the correct amount, as it says as well. I didn't put way too much of it or something like that for the fuel that was in the tank, and I did that to try and clean out the fuel system if for whatever reason that was an issue. And the car ran like absolute crap on the Marvel Mystery Oil. I ended up taking it off of the 93 race tune that was on it and putting it on the stock tune, just hoping that since this car can run on 87 on its stock tune, or the 91 performance tune can actually go down to 87 from Bama as well. But for whatever reason, that tune has never worked for me. It just literally doesn't actually upload it onto the car's ECU. It always has some sort of failure for some reason. I don't know why. I'll have to talk to them about that when I put in the revision for the 93 race tune on the car. But I put it on the stock tune hoping that the 93 with the Marvel Mystery Oil, I mean, it was probably gonna bring down like the overall octane rating of the fuel slightly. So I figured it'd be safer running it on the stock tune, and it still ran like absolute garbage. It was dying at idle all the time. The idle RPMs were all over the place. I ran it through, I think, in total 2 tanks of fuel, and then I was like, yeah, this is not working. And so I ran another like tank and a half of just regular fuel through it, and the idle issues were not going away. So originally, I thought that the Marvel Mystery Oil had caused my idle issues, somehow gunked up or blocked some passages in like the injectors or something like that, I don't know. And I ran seafoam through the tank, and it seemed like it helped a little bit, but not much at all. And then by the time I'd run another several tanks of fuel through the car, I wasn't sure how much the seafoam had realistically done. But like I said, at the time when I looked at the data log file, it didn't seem like it was trimming any excess fuel, so I started to kind of just think, okay, well, maybe it was just a coincidence that that happened with the Marvel Mystery Oil, because something else could have happened at the same time, and I just blamed that, and it's very possible that that wasn't the issue. And so that's why I started investigating other things, and there are a lot of potential things that can cause an idle issue on the Coyotes. Well, or any engine really, but there's a lot of specific things with Coyote engines and a lot of Ford's mod motor platforms that there's just a million different things that can cause idle issues. So it wasn't really that far-fetched until I went back recently and saw that clip that you just saw about it trimming a lot of excess fuel. And I've kind of come full circle. That all started with this. And I don't know why in my scenario that this seemed to happen, but this, I sound like Doug DeMuro, this really seemed to screw things up for me. And you might be thinking, Colton, how can you say that that screwed stuff up for you if you still have the issue? You don't really know that that's what it is. Well, interestingly, after I saw that excess amount of fuel being trimmed, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go buy another fuel cleaner. And I intended originally to get something like AMSOIL PI or something like that, because it's been proven to work very well, but I couldn't find that anywhere nearby me. So what I ended up buying was this, Lucas Oil. It calls it upper cylinder lubricant with injector cleaners and fuel conditioners. The complete fuel treatment. Why? Because I tried 2 other fuel cleaners and I don't know, maybe this was gonna work. Let me be 100% clear, I don't really care or have any interest in the upper cylinder lubricant, nor do I think that that is probably doing much of anything. But the capability of this to clean poor quality fuel and or clean the overall fuel system is what I was interested in. And I run this in 2 tanks of fuel on the Mustang. And interestingly, my idle issues have all but vanished. Now it doesn't idle 100% perfectly, but whenever it does have a strange idle event, it can pretty much be explained away with the tune needing a revision, and or this is a manual car and it is sometimes difficult for the ECU to adjust for huge changes of load and kind of like out of nowhere. So like if you're accelerating and then you have to come to a sudden stop and you push the clutch in and instantly it has no load, it might kind of stumble for a second and bring it back up to idle. Things like that have happened, but nothing crazy and not nearly to the extent of before, and I have not been worried about it stalling. All it's done is maybe idled a little bit low for about a second and then popped right back up to where it's supposed to be. And along with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the data log file now. So we have the RevX tuner all hooked up there. Let's go ahead and start the car and see what's going on here. Again, like I've talked about before, it does still have the check engine light because it has the long tube headers, nothing crazy. And yes, I am still low on fuel because apparently every time I start a video, I have no gas in my tank. And if we look at the data log now, on average, it's trimming somewhere between 0.92 and about 1.0 on the fuel trim. And that is very interesting because you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is based off of a percentage. So 1.0 would be regular fuel trim. If it is at 0.94, that's 6% less fuel trim than normal. And if it was way up at 2.0, that's 100% additional fuel trim. You know what I mean? So it's not just like a regular percentage, but it's a very simple calculation. And you can see the Lambda systems as labeled LAMBSE Bank 1 and Bank 2 are also totally normal for it being at idle. About 1.0 is pretty normal. And as you can see, the idle is set at 800 RPM and it is idling very happy right there at 800 RPM. It is idling very, very well now. Everything sounds really good. So this is not what I expected was going to happen. If you go back on the videos of previously during the saga of the idle issues with the Mustang, I said multiple times that I really don't think that it's a fuel delivery issue. And of course, as these things go, what does it turn out or seemingly turn out to be? A fuel delivery issue. And that seems like a really obvious place to start, but just because of what the data log was reading me, I just didn't think that that's what it was. But everything seems really good now. The car is running great at the moment, and when doing hard pulls and stuff like that, it feels healthier than ever right now. It pulls just as hard as it ever has, and although that's not something that I feel like was lacking before, and it could also be the result of temperatures coming down slightly from where they have been recently, it does feel like the car has just a little bit more to give in like the hard pull department through second to third gear or whatever it might be. I guess it's fixed. I'm gonna continue running this through a couple more tanks just to make sure everything's all cleaned up. And I'm definitely not paid by Lucas for any of this, of course, nor Marble Mystery Oil or Seafoam or whatever. I've used all of these. I've also used Gum Out, fuel system cleaner on my Subaru and stuff like that. I will say that none of them have given me nearly as obvious of a result as this Lucas Oil upper cylinder lubricant and or injector and fuel conditioner has done. When putting the Marble Mystery Oil in, sure, I don't know for certain that the Marble Mystery Oil is what caused these issues, but it certainly did not help them, and it might have aggravated an issue that was already there. This has helped tremendously. But interestingly, beyond just this, there's one other thing that I did that may have also helped, which is surprising and strange. When I wrinkle coated this intake fairly recently, well, I say fairly recently, it's kind of like the other day sort of thing, where the other day is like any time between a day ago and your birth. I don't know, it was like probably months ago at this point. But I wrinkle coated this intake, and when I put it back in, I realized that one thing that I actually forgot to do was reconnect the stock sound tube to the intake. And this doesn't seem like it would do absolutely anything, and I understand that, but when reconnecting it along with running this through the tank, like I said, the idle and fuel trim has improved tremendously. I don't think that the sound tube has anything to do with the fuel trim. However, it is possible, since the opening for where the sound tube opens up, it's a pretty big diameter of hose that hooks up to the intake, and that would have just been open right there, and it is very, very close to the front of the engine, and therefore it's actually very close to the headers. That is a lot of really hot air that could have completely bypassed the intake filter itself and gone straight in and actually caused really high intake air temperatures past where the mass airflow sensor is. So it's reading and is giving its reading to the ECU. The ECU is deciding what to do based off of the reading that the mass airflow sensor is giving it, but hotter air is actually coming in. Do I think that that would cause the idle issue by itself? No, but could it aggravate it? Possibly. It is possible to delete the stock sound tube, but it's definitely a good idea to block that part of the intake, or a lot of intake systems in general don't have that at all, and they give you a block off for the firewall to completely take the sound tube out. But it's really interesting that the combination of these two things seem to solve those issues, and I do genuinely think that both of them together very well could have been, or seem to have been, because of what we were experiencing. The sound tube is just kind of a freak thing, but again, if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense that if hotter air was going in than what the mass airflow sensor was reading and supplying to the engine, that could definitely screw with the way that it runs. But all of that's been fixed up, and the fuel system seems to be doing a lot better, obviously. Like I said, I'll continue running this through a few tanks of fuel in the future, just to make sure that everything stays all right, and I'm really happy with the results, and I finally feel like we can put in for the tune revision, and we can hopefully continue modifying this car. Now, I will admit that I am quite broke at the moment. I have what I need, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't have a lot additional at the moment. My wife and I are dealing with a lot of bills and stuff like that, so as much as I would love to do big modifications to this car, and as much as I would love to show them to you, and I'm sure you guys would like to see it, that sort of thing is probably going to be slightly fewer and farther between than I would like for the time being, but I will definitely try my best to supply as much good content as I possibly can. And as far as things I'd like to do in the future, a couple of things that I really want to address as soon as possible with the Mustang is, first of all, a little bit of aesthetic things. I'd like to do a different lower front valence than the RTR front lip that it has on it. I don't know if it's actually a real RTR lip, but it's RTR style, at least. It has a crack right in the middle, and although I don't dislike this, seeing it in person has actually grown a lot on me. I much prefer some of the different options, like for instance the Boss 302 front valence, I think looks really, really good on this year-range Mustang. I'd also like to get a different rear spoiler of some sorts. I haven't decided for sure on which one I want to go with. There's one that is probably more functional and one that probably looks better, and I don't know which way I'm gonna swing yet. Another huge thing that I want to get done to this car as soon as I can is I'm going to have the wheels that are on the car professionally stripped and painted, and the rear wheel on the driver's side also has a bend in it, so I'm gonna have that repaired as well. I'm gonna do that as soon as possible. That's still going to cost me like $500 to have all of that done. That's still a decent chunk of money to throw at the car out of nowhere, but it's definitely a lot cheaper than a new set of wheels and tires would be, because if I'm getting what I want for the car, that's probably gonna be closer to $3,000. I still wanna do that in the future, but in the meantime, having the wheels nicely finished and not chipping away like crazy would make a huge difference. I also might play around with spacers a little bit and see if we can get the fitment just a little bit better than it is right now. And finally, some power mods that I'd love to do soon. A huge thing I'd like to do is replace this replace this BBK intake, probably with a K&N blackout intake or something like that, or maybe a JLT intake of some sort. Both of those, if I'm not mistaken, have a bigger diameter, inner diameter of tubing, and they also have much better ducting than the BBK intake does. This has a really basic heat shield around it, but it doesn't seal against anything like the hood, and like I said, there's no ducting that goes in the factory location that the factory airbox would have ducting wise, so it doesn't really make use of anything. Is it more free flowing? Probably, but I'm sure this has many more heat soak issues than a stock or other aftermarket cold air intake would most likely have. So I'd like to replace that. I also it's not my favorite looking cold air intake, which is such a small thing to complain about, but it's not my favorite. Probably gonna replace it. And the other major thing is replacing the stock intake manifold with a 2018 plus Gen 3 intake manifold and some 47-pound injectors so we can run E85. If we assume right now that with the long tube headers and full exhaust and cold air intake that's currently on the car is netting us around 410 to 420 horsepower at the wheels, and now that is just a guess based on like DynoJet numbers. It could absolutely be lower than that. It could also be higher than that. I've seen either way with Gen 1 Coyotes with very, very similar modifications. If we assume we're right around that range, well, replacing the intake manifold and running E85 could easily give us an extra 20 or 30 horsepower and carry it further up into the RPM band and basically allow us to rev higher as well. The stock Gen 1 Coyote manifold kind of runs out of puff at like 6,600 RPM. By the time you hit 7,000, there's not a lot more that it has to give, whereas the Gen 3 Coyote manifold is rated for up to 7,500 RPM. Ported, maybe 8,000 RPM, which is probably what I would do is ported. So some stuff like that would be super fun to do soon, so I'm definitely looking forward to that, and I hope you guys are as well. So hopefully we can say this is the end of the saga of idle issues on the Mustang, and we can just look forward to a good running car. It is running fantastic right now, and the fact that the fuel trim is actually like lower than it's ever been means that there's actually an excess amount of fuel that's having to be pulled back a little bit. So that's a really good sign, and I am super excited about that. And I just can't wait to see what the future holds for this car. And hopefully as this channel grows, even more cars in the future. I'm not saying anything, but what I am saying is that if and when I pay this car off, I kind of want another Subaru. Not to replace this car, and we'll see. I change my mind about everything car and or anything I'm interested in related every 5.5 seconds. So who knows if I'll still think that anytime soon, but thank you guys again for watching. I very much appreciate you guys stopping by the videos. And if you did enjoy this video, or if you enjoyed any other videos you've seen on the channel and you'd like to see more content from me and my 2011 Mustang GT, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps out, and we are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. We have just under 200 left to go, so if you can help us reach that goal, that would be absolutely amazing, and I will see you guys all in the next one.